And we should be live. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all. This is part 2 of the Cion Papi reading. My name is Anyeli Valerio, and I am the founder of Dominican Writers Association. We are a 501c3 nonprofit with the mission to publish as many of our beautiful authors as possible so that the world may know them, as well as providing them with tools and resources so that they could become either traditionally or self-published on their own. So today, like I mentioned before, we're having our Cion Papi reading part 2. We are including how many authors? I think about 10. 2 of them couldn't make it today. So you're still gonna get a live reading. And Jamberly here is going to be the host. So this is how it works, guys. There's a chat on the right-hand side of the YouTube live stream. You could comment, mándenle encouragement y échale todas las porras a los lectores. Let them know how you feel about their reading. Definitely share the YouTube link. And if you guys who are participating in the live stream, the readers, want to also see the chat, you could just open the YouTube channel on your phone. If possible, put the volume all the way down so that it doesn't echo, and you'll be able to see the reading and the live chat as it's happening. You can share it on your social media and your WhatsApp group, definitely your WhatsApp group, porque ahí es que están todos los tíos y todas las tías esperando que ustedes compartan el enlace para ellos ver a todo el mundo leyendo. So, Jamberly, take it away.
Hi. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight for the second part of Cion Papi. I got my copy. And about cuenticos, I've said this so many times that it's just like a recording at this point. But let me just say that we've come a long way from just an idea of sharing our experiences in our language to now having almost 60 cuenticos writers, becoming a little family. And some of you already published with us, to Abril, Henry, Luz, and there's new faces. So this is exciting every time we do a live because I get to match the names with the faces, apart from like all the millions of emails I sent. So welcome to the new writers. And this is how it's going to go. Well, Angie already basically said, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give a bio of each of the writers, and then you're going to start reading from your stories and sharing it with us. Yeah, so let me get to it. And then after that, we can all like discuss our process, our feelings, because, you know, the topic of fathers is definitely my favorite to write about myself. So I want to see how you guys felt about writing this piece. So, okay, let's start. Abril. Abril Peña is a Queens-born writer, a social impact professional, and the eldest daughter of Dominican immigrant parents. She relishes writing her personal narratives as a first-generation New Yorker, a young adult navigating her career and relationships, and an Afro-Latina trying to understand her multifaceted identity. Abril thrived within the nonprofit and corporate sectors, advocating for youth, education, racial and gender equity, and financial literacy. Dominican Writers Association has proudly featured Abril's cuenticos in 2 chapbooks, La Doña and Cion Papi. Abril's literary works can be found at readabril.com. Anyeli De Los Santos was born and raised in the countryside of Nagua, Dominican Republic. Through her mother's perception of social mobility in the U.S., Anyeli grew up in the Dominican household focused on academic achievements. Her writing focuses on the experiences of marginalized communities. Her experience in social work ties her passion for assisting vulnerable families in New York City. Elizabeth Rodríguez Canario is an East New York, Brooklyn native with Dominican roots. She's a proud daughter of hardworking immigrants who instilled motivation and gratitude for the opportunities presented in this journey called life. Liz is an avid reader and lover of culture, people, and food. Henry Suarez is a Dominican-American writer born and raised in Corona, Queens. He writes on the immigrant experience, growing up bicultural bilingual, and his fatherhood journey, through a cleverly comical, effortlessly entertaining, relatable perspective. Henry resides in Westchester, New York, with his wife and precious daughters. His personal narratives have appeared in Somos en Escrito, DWA Cuenticos, and Acentos Review. To discover more of Henry's literary work, visit henrysuarezwrites.com. Jennifer? No. Luz Maria Mack was born in Villamella, Dominican Republic, and immigrated to the United States as a young child with her family. She comes from a big, loving family that is a recipe for laughter and many beautiful memories. Luz earned a master's degree in public administration from the Metropolitan College of New York and worked as a healthcare professional in New York City. Massiel Alfonso is a Dominican writer, spoken word poet, and author of a handful of poems. Her more recent work has appeared in La Libreta, Spanglish Voices, The Acentos Review, The Abuela Story Project, and in She Rose magazine. Massiel is also a Dominican Writers Association Writer Salon member and can be found at MassielAlfonso.com. Nairoby Sanchez is a writer and dedicated public servant passionate about civic engagement and community outreach. Her writing explores lived experiences and how they shaped her policy outlook. She earned her bachelor's in political science from UMass Lowell and graduated from Northern Essex Community College with a degree in political science. Nairobi recently received a graduate certificate in cannabis regulatory affairs from Clark University. Rafael Peña Martinez, who goes by Nico Pension, yes, okay, is the online community, is a Dominican sci-fi short story author of Beatty series. Correct me if I'm wrong. Who also Bate. Okay, I knew I wasn't saying it right. Who also blogs and live streams interviews on productive gamers on his own YouTube channel, Nico Pension, providing content for young adult gamers and introverts who have amazing talent but need a push and nudge to get started in order to show how the gaming skills we've developed over our long gaming careers can be applied to our daily lives. As this mindset change on gaming skills can improve productivity, which will change the way we look at gaming. He also co-hosts the business professional, writing, and publisher-centric podcast, Pen Podcast, along with Matthew Harms. You can find more of his work on nicopension.com. Yaddy and Juana aren't here, but I want to read their bios too, because we might share those essays too. Okay, Yaddy Valerio is a Dominican-American writer, storyteller, host of the Cafecito Time con Yaddy podcast, and educator based in Uptown New York City. As a first-generation American and a child of immigrants, Yaddy is passionate about dismantling intergenerational trauma and breaking the stigma on mental health in the Dominican community. Yaddy's writing has been published in the Manhattan Times, Galleria Magazine, and Dominican Writers Association. She currently facilitates a monthly writing workshop, Sip, Write, and Share. Juana is not here also, but I'll read hers too. Juana Garcia was born in Harlem, New York. Currently, she is pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing at the Southern University of New Hampshire. She enjoys reading novels and spending time outdoors with her husband and 2 children. Sándwich con Morir Soñando is her first published piece. Okay, so that's all of you for tonight. A lot of you have been published, a lot, and others have not been published. So that just goes to show that we're like sharing everyone's stories. A lot of people that send in their stories aren't writers, but are storytellers, and so we want to include those too. But also we want to encourage you to use this as a stepping stone to get your work out there, but also like to share Dominican voices in other places as well. So with that being said, let's share your stories. Abril, you're first.
Hello, thank you so much, Amberly, for making this space, and Angie too for, you know, inviting us to do these lives. I've only done one live before, and I'm trying to be better at the, but they're so nerve-wracking. But I'm excited to hear everyone else's stories. And so with that, I'll start with mine, and I'm just gonna read a short excerpt. And mine is titled Agridulce. It wasn't until college that I discovered that Papi's charm was not just a quirk of his, but a symptom of being a Dominican man. These men, who spoke fast and danced slow, were admired by women from afar, and an admiration based on lust but lacking in trust. I came from a Dominican family, surrounded by hermanos, primos, tíos, and mi papi. Growing up, I hadn't realized that they, like the men that my friends would later become heartbroken over, were also quote unquote Dominican men. It became a common trope in the real life dating stories I heard and online. Dominican men are cheaters. They play their girlfriends and wives like giras, and they sweet talk them into forgiveness. Tales of the creative and sometimes funny ways that women have caught their husbands cheating make rounds in Dominican families like fresh café de la greca. Like how my grandmother found out that my grandfather had impregnated another woman while she was also pregnant with his child. She waited in the dark for him to get home with a machete in hand. It's a challenging realization that the man who frequented PTA meetings and bake sales was the same man who could cause women's deep emotional damage, that a good father could simultaneously be a lousy husband, in the way that a sour lemon could produce sweet lemonade. Throughout my life, I saw how exhausted mommy was, carrying the heavy weight of resentment while having to raise the living remains of the most tumultuous relationship she's ever had. And yet, like cold lemonade on a hot day, she can't resist letting out a laugh when Papi tells his Papi jokes. That's it.
That line about the sour lemon, I feel like that's my favorite in the whole piece. I don't know why, but the whole thing is like a balance. Like, I feel like the whole book is a balance between good fathers and fathers that weren't there, but also like showing, your piece is like showing what a good father he was, but like a lousy husband. So it's challenging having to come to terms with
It is. And I think that that's like when I was writing it, it's like I don't want to, and I think that I did the same with my mom's piece, but for la doña, but I think that what's important to showcase is that our parents are multifaceted, and they could be good at certain things and bad at certain things simultaneously. It doesn't make them a fully good person. It doesn't make them a fully bad person. But I wanted to show kind of that distinction, because I mean, biting into a lemon is gonna be a terrible experience, but if you turn it into lemonade, it might be not that bad. So I was hoping that, you know, that could come across.
I love it. And then how you end the piece. Okay, let me not say too much so people can actually buy the book and read it for themselves. But like,
Yes, buy it.
your brothers, your uncles, like the next generation, they're doing better. Like, they're more aware of the stereotype and how to come, like, get away from that. Right?
I think that like the best example for me is my my brothers, because I feel like they defy all the Dominican stereotypes like fully. And also in my cousins and some of, you know, because I think that we are this generation, or like when you think about like, well, every generation does this, but in particular for like millennials and Gen Z, they're seeing the mistakes that their parents made and they want to do better. So I feel like, you know, especially like a lot more men are going to therapy now, and they're kind of talking through their issues, and they're trying not to make the same mistakes with their kids that maybe their parents did with them. So I think that I think that I have hope. And the thing is that you have to have hope, and you have to believe that men could be better, because we can't allow this, like, you know, weaponized incompetence anymore. We can't just say, sí son los hombres, sí son los hombres dominicanos. No, you could fix that. You could change that up. They have the power to do that, you know, so.
Thank you. Fighting the stereotype, people. Let's do better. I mean, I know what I'm saying, that I see Dad here, I see Henry here, like, you know, you're representing. So let's do that. Moving on. Thank you, Abril. Let's go on to Anyeli's piece. Anyeli's essay is on page 80 if you have the book. So yeah, let us know what page you're reading from so we can follow along. Okay, go for it.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm actually one of the new writers in the community, and I am so pleased to be with you all. And I started following most of y'all on IG. I see y'all. Okay, so I was thinking of starting in page 82 and then just finishing it up. Okay. Mi papá no era un hombre. Mi papá no era un padre que siempre estaba presente. Teníamos una relación de larga distancia, un par de llamadas al mes para saber cómo estaba y para preguntar si necesitaba dinero. Dominicano al fin, papi creía que su deber como padre nada más era abrir la cartera. Yo acepté y normalicé su forma de amarme. Entendí que él tampoco vivió una infancia donde el amor fuera parte del día a día, porque habían otras obligaciones. My father and I migrated to the US in 2008. I reunited with my mother in New York City. I loved visiting my dad in Lawrence, Massachusetts. At the end of 2018, he chose to break from work and reality. Papi traded alcohol for opioids to cope with stress and depression. He designed his own reality in his mind, one where he did not care about the opinion of anyone else but his own, one where social shame meant nothing. My father did not like to show his sadness. He also did not like to see me cry. He used to say, "Mija, no me llore. Llorar te hace ver débil." Papi always asked if I thought he was un buen padre. Claro, papi. Yo sé que tú me quieres, I'll reply. I intended to protect his feelings, even when that meant ignoring my own. Papi was secretly a hopeless romantic. He had a tattoo on his left arm with a faded heart, and inside, the word amor at the center. He was a believer, salía él. El último día que visité a papi, me cantó una canción que decía, y cuando me muera, mira las estrellas. Algo así. Con lágrimas en los ojos, lo escuché. Tenía la sensación que me estaba preparando para su partida. Throughout my childhood, los vecinos told me my dad was insane. In my eyes, there was nothing crazy about him. Those who questioned his behaviors were told, nadie se levantó conmigo para ir a trabajar a las 5 de la mañana. He was tired of what society demanded of him. My father's life experience made me think about the intersectionality between toxic masculinity, addiction, and mental health. When all three are triggered, mental health meets addiction. This, however, is often ignored. I lost my father to a horrible disease named addiction. Una de esas enfermedades que se quita y vuelve cuando las personas están débiles. Con todos sus defectos y errores, lo llevo en mi memoria todos los días. In one of his check-in phone calls, he said to me, si tú te portas bien, tú tendrás un padre eterno. And that's why I chose to name my piece, the title of it, Una vida eterna junto a ti, because I don't want to just think that it was just here. And somewhere, somehow, it makes me feel closer to him, to see him one more time, even if it's not in this life, but eternal. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, reading it gives me chills. So it can be easy to read that and experience that all over again, especially the parts where he's speaking to you. There's most of your essays like from your reflections and also him speaking to you, which makes it very emotional, but also it shows the complexity of loving this person, this flawed human, that's battling his own demons, but knowing that he loves you in his own way. And that's something that you're struggling with, keeping your own feelings to yourself to protect his.
Yeah, and that's most of my like my fight with him, because family members were always telling him, like, get out of that BCO and so forth. But it's like he never listened. He was struggling with it his whole life. And if you were to read the whole piece, that's why everybody needs to buy it. He had been struggling his whole life with it, and he will stop and keep going because it's a sickness and is really something that is often ignored in the community. And that's why I am so interested in mental health being something that's really needed, especially for our Dominican fathers and everyone, honestly, because we're all caught up on it.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. It's a conversation that has to come up. And the Cuentico chapbook that comes after this, it's also touching on mental health. So yeah, it's definitely a conversation that should keep going. So thank you for bringing that up. Who follows? Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. That made me want to cry, and I'm holding it in. So, wow. This is my first published piece, and it's completely different following that heartbreaking story. But mine is Growing Roots from La Llanada to Brooklyn. And I'm going to read from page 55, and I'm going to hop around a little bit. So, Facido Rodríguez, my dad, was a pioneer. Papi and his brothers helped their father, El Gran Ángel Rodríguez, with labor-intensive farm work. They called my dad El Doctor because he scrubbed his hands vigorously after a day's work on the farm. So much so that he wouldn't leave a speck of dirt visible on his long hands. He dreamt of receiving an education and excelling in his studies, but was aware of the impossibility of achieving such ambitions in El Campo. His father ridiculed him for pursuing a profession that did not entail dirtying his hands. Still, he carefully planned his departure to La Capital. My dad, I'm going to skip around to page 56 on the bottom part. So Papi became Freddy Rodríguez, as the US military nicknamed him because no one could pronounce his name, or perhaps they didn't think to try. When my dad became a naturalized citizen of the United States, he changed his name to Facido as a joke because his name was continuously mispronounced. He might as well pay homage to his Cibao roots and include more eyes. In June of 1970, Freddie finally paid his way to the US. He arrived at the tenement building on Bruce Street in Manhattan, where his three brothers rented a 2-bedroom on the 6th floor of the Walker building. They had bunk beds in each bedroom and housed 10 of their compatriots who arrived in Nueva York from El Campo. They ventured out at night during garbage days and collected chairs, mattresses, and pillows to furnish their apartment anytime they expected otro primo to arrive from El Cibao. Don't let this fool you. These were clean, disciplined military men raised by the great Ángel Rodríguez. Their apartment was spotless, regardless of how they furnished it. These young men were looking for a piece of the American dream they believed would be accessible with hard work and sacrifice. This arrangement was a small price. They learned from their father that their property and livelihood could quickly be taken away if they didn't own it, that he needed to set roots and own his lands and property, which he did in New York and Dominican Republic. He learned from his mother that to grow, you had to keep learning, which he continues to do even at 78 years on this earth. Hopping to page 58. Papi is one of the many Dominican men who worked hard in this country, built communities, established generational wealth, and believed wholeheartedly in the importance of education. While he didn't become a doctor or attend university, he retired at 52 after working for 17 years as an employee and a small business owner. He has lived off the fruits of his labor and is still active in the community in Brooklyn and his hometown, alongside his childhood sweetheart, my mom, Luz del Carmen Rodríguez de Rodríguez. He succeeded in pursuing the American dream and inspired us to keep learning, growing, and empowering those who come after us. He's also the proud father of 2 college-educated women and has 5 grandchildren, one of which has already graduated from college in a pandemic nonetheless. And I gotta give a shout out to my daughter, Destiny, because she's a college grad. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And congratulations to your daughter.
Thanks.
Your piece is an example of the other side of the stereotype that we see of Dominican men. But it also made me think about a lot of the pieces talk about where the fathers come from. Like some campos, somewhere, they endured all this hardship and came to where they're at for their family, for their generations and generations. It's all about sacrifice. The American dream is not all like, oh, you come to this country and everything's like happily ever after. No, they busted their asses so then their next generation could be somebody, could do something, could graduate college. So that's beautiful. The only thing that was just like, when he had to change his name because people can't pronounce it, this is the first community of people that I'm around with weird names like mine. I'm just like, our names are awesome. Like, we shouldn't have to change it for nobody. So
this is true. This is true.
Anything you want to share?
Thank you. So with reading all the other stories, I also found that it depends on the mood you're in to write, because if I wanted to focus on the mujeriego part, that's a whole other story. But he is a good man. He's a great man, but my mom still loves him. That's her first love. So unfortunately, it's part of that generation, I think.
Like Abril said, good father. But, there's the other side, but there's always lemonade to be had. So, I mean, I don't know. Dominicans just have that charisma, I'm not going to excuse it. Okay. I'm not going to forget. I take it back. Who's next? Henry, are you next? Yeah. Henry, you're next. Your essay's on page 27. So everyone say hi to Henry.
I'm gonna jump to page 28. I'll just read a quick piece from there, and then I'll jump over to page 31. And as for me, so this is my second time publishing with the Dominican writers Cuenticos. And for me, finding DWA has been life-changing, to say the least, because it's just like you spend a lot of time reading, and those spaces usually aren't inclusive of our stories and like our identities. So to find this and like be able to share the space with all of you it's wonderful. Honestly, I couldn't ask for more. So thank you, each and every one of you, for sharing your stories, and for just Angie and Yamberly for having this space. So Papi helped us with homework, overseeing that it was completed. As a math teacher in San Francisco de Macorís, he was excited to work on math formulas. Once, we worked on a packet of worksheets for hours. When I received the graded work, I was surprised that all of the answers were wrong. I'm going to assume that he was careless that day. Otherwise, the tale of him being a math teacher was slightly exaggerated. Getting us out of the house and immersing us in new experiences was something he focused on as well. We visited museums together long before any class trips. He would pick up a few of my cousins and we'd go to the park to play catch or shoot the ball on the basketball court. Weekend road trips would always be something to look forward to. There was DC, Boston, or Philly, you name it. He loved a good road trip so long as we kept quiet in the back seat. I'm going to just skip a page over to, 2 pages to 31. I don't believe in celebrating a father that does the absolute minimum or praising them just for showing up. I looked around at my friends and even within my own family, and I didn't see other dads doing the same things that my father did, such as dedicated family time. We never had to wait for our dad to pick us up for visitations. He was equally consistent in surprising us with ice cream if we received good grades, as he was to busting down our door at 8 a.m. during the weekend, insisting that we get up and do something constructive, then returning a moment later to point out that our room smelled like a horse stable. Once, while getting a haircut, the barber stopped to answer a call. After hanging up, he said, "Yo no me voy a poner loco con ese muchacho. Tú nunca has visto un hombre parir un chamaquito. Esos son problemas de la mamá." And sure enough, that was the last time that I got a haircut from that lowlife. And I've tried to keep haircut conversation to a minimum since then. I recognize how flawed this statement was even before having kids of my own, because I was reminded daily of what a gift it was to have an engaged father. There are times that I doubt myself in my performance as a parent, even though I recognize that it's impossible to be a perfect parent. Mine was far from it, and that's just fine. Seeing and recognizing the flaws of others helps me to see what my limitations are. At the very least, I'm more accepting when others point them out to me. Papi, who loves to read, was not a fan of fantastical tales, but appreciated books related to practical matters and politics. Creativity and imagination weren't encouraged in our home. I had a knack for storytelling and making people laugh, always watching stand-up and wanting to emulate what they did. I remember telling Papi that when I grew up, I wanted to continue telling stories and entertaining. I dreamed of being on TV. He said there's no future in that. It was better to focus my energy on something concrete, like being a doctor or a lawyer. ¿Tú crees que uno se mata trabajando de que para que tú estés haciendo chistes? The rules were simple. Aquí se vino a trabajar, déjense de ilusiones y pónganse para lo suyo. Papi is a perfect example of the saying that becoming a grandparent changes you. When I started writing, I was surprised at how encouraging he was. I imagined he would insist it was a waste of time. Instead, he provided me with suggestions on topics to explore. Suddenly, he's a grand champion of the arts and culture. La escritura es muy importante, una parte esencial de mantener la historia de una familia. I've come home to find him rolling around on the front lawn while my daughters cover him in leaves and grass. He becomes their negotiator when I say it's time to go inside and do homework. Déjala que jueguen un ratito. Y este tipo, what happened to the guy that insisted nothing came before homework? Suddenly, the rules have become noticeably relaxed. All these years later, though, he's still present and engaged. He remains skilled at pulling me aside, although now it's when he sees I'm too strict with the girls. He loves to give advice that he won't follow himself. Coge la cosa con calma, mi hijo. Aprende ahora antes que sea muy tarde.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm telling you, anytime I read anything of Henry, this is what I'm doing. It's like just laughing to myself the whole time. Like, how could you not? Hello. I love it's so sweet how you talk about your father. And then, but you also feel like the rage at the barbershop. I can see you like storming out, like, and then on top of that, when you read his part, like when your dad is talking, like I die laughing. So thank you.
Yeah, no, the barbershop was really frustrated because like this dude picks up the phone, he's talking to his whatever baby mother or whatever, however he refers to her, and he's talking about his own kids, and it's like as if they were just some possession or something that was just disposable. And so it's really disheartening. It's frustrating, like as a Dominican man, to see another of us behaving that way. So it kind of just pushes you forward to say, like, yo no quiero ser como ese tigre nunca en la vida. So,
but you don't hear that often. I don't think I've come across a Dominican man that expresses himself like that. Like, no, that's not cool. Like, I don't like that. I'm not going to be like that. So it's refreshing. Your point of view is
I express it to him. I say it to myself.
Oh, no, but still the fact that you're sharing this opinion, but like, how many people are even watching this? Like, with our community, like, hello, guys, do better. Like, that's not okay. You hear the women complain about it, but for a man to say, it's like, yeah, what he said. So I like that. I love that your father is into books and everything. But then the fact that every parent, like, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor. And the whole writing thing is like, no, that's not going to make you money. Move on with another dream. I think we've all heard it. We've all been there. But the fact that you're writing, you're putting your work out there, and now he's supporting you, whether because he's a grandfather or not. But I'm glad you're doing it and making us all laugh.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And that's another reason Cuenticos is here, because where else are we going to find stories like this? Y ese tipo, like, but when you read it, you're like, I know, right? Ese tipo, like, it's our language. The whole Spanish back and forth thing, I'm loving it. So thank you for that. Who's next? Luz, you're next. Her essay is on page 62. So
oh, thank you for that. I was gonna say entre una palabra y la otra. You'll find me. No, guys, thank you so much for this opportunity. For those that don't know me, my name is Luz. I submitted for Cuenticos, really hoping I got picked. And when I got picked, I was so honored because I traditionally write children's books because I feel like a kid at heart. And as you could tell, I'm just kind of like that silly person. So when I was writing, it was like I was really stretching myself to do something with a more serious tone. And it was so appropriate to write about my father, because he's a serious man. He's like the opposite of a lot of the stories we read. And I love it because I appreciate everyone that read their father, because I saw a little bit of like little glimpses of my dad, but my dad was always just so serious and solemn. So my story is called my Silent Hero. It's about my dad, and I'm gonna read only a couple of excerpts, okay? We thought we knew everything we needed to know about our dad. He was a bodeguero, he loved to eat, and he made the best pancakes. What more could there possibly be to this man, right? That was until my mom disclosed that Papi was a veteran. He fought the Vietnam War. She unpacked various medals with unique appearances, medals received for many acts of heroism. We discovered old pictures buried away, displaying a slender man as a soldier, a man drastically different from the person I called Daddy. It was hard to think of this quiet, sweet-tempered, jovial man in combat. And even harder was experiencing the first time he opened up about fighting a war. I remember his quavering voice as he recounted the fear he felt when being drafted, not having been given a choice and being forced into a war. He flashes back his mother's cries as she didn't want to send her only son to fight. But unfortunately, fate took him to battle. He vividly recalled constantly being on high alert. My sister asked, "How did you survive?" He chuckled and he said there was a time when he thought everything in the jungle had eyes, waiting for him to let his guard down. Being alert was the only way he knew how to survive. While we were young and didn't understand living on the edge, we understood that this experience was very traumatic. Dad continued his poignant retailing of survival, living a nightmare of fighting a war in a foreign land. The only way to quiet his mind was by picking up an unhealthy vice, such as indulging in romo. The awards didn't cause a reaction from Dad, almost as if it brought back a forced memory that was better left hidden in the box than brought to light. As Mom showed us his medals, the Purple Heart caught my attention. He suddenly exclaimed that the Purple Heart was for rescuing a wounded soldier and another for saving someone in the line of fire. He was wounded by a fragmentation grenade, injuring his lower back, which affects him still. Papi never shared how he was recovering mentally or physically, only that he was grateful those days were left in the past, that he no longer drank alcohol and was a father. After being discharged from the military, it took him a long time to regain his sense of self and normalcy, and we respected him for not wanting to talk about it. As I grew older, I learned to love his silent demeanor and accept him for his selfless ways. And I'll stop there because I really feel like the reason I read that excerpt, because when you meet my dad, he's really, my brother-in-law said it best. Like when you meet him, you don't know if you're meeting a mobster or a gang member, because, you know, he's just like this guy that respects people that are quiet and don't have much to say. And he laughs at the stupidity people do. Like he's always cracking himself up. He's like, oh, that person is like, it's funny. Like he's trying to like, it's almost like this weird thing. Like you get it, but he's really harmless, but he's so quiet. And it comes from this past that he had that we never knew and discovered when we were teenagers.
It makes you wonder who these people are. Like they're strangers to us. Our parents are strangers to us, really. Like we don't even see them as people until we're parents ourselves, because they're just mom and dad. We don't think they have a past. They have trauma of their own. They've experienced life differently than us. We don't think that until we're like, wait, what? Like you went to war?
Yeah.
I mean, who was he? Was he this quiet man before all that happened? You know?
No, I heard, and I can't write about something I didn't experience. I heard he was awesome, un tremendo salsero. He used to have una guagua que la llamaba el baja panty. I was like, my dad, this man that was a preacher for 5 years. but I can't write about something I never experienced. My dad was very quiet. And when my mom argues with him, he's like, ay, sí, mamita, ya, espérate. Like, that's him. Like, and honestly, till, you know, there's little things that catches the rise of him, but I'm 42, turning 43 next year. I have never seen my dad raise his voice at my mother. And I say that because that's how much he is. Like, he's like very like a strict man. And it's hard because everyone says, ay, es un hombre chapado la antigua. And I'm like, really? We're all men like that? Because I see my uncles, and let me tell you, I should have written about my uncles.
We're gonna have to revisit this whole father thing next year to see what else we come up with, because
yeah, they're different.
Yeah. Whether it's an uncle or whatever, Dominican men are yeah, we need a part 2 of Dominican men.
Yeah, we do. But he was a silent man to me, and he's always been my hero.
And like you said, a preacher that helps the people in the community, then he sees the street and he lets you know, like, hey, that person, like, I can relate. I mean, I could have ended up in the street like him, but he ended up being a father instead, and, you know, like fighting his demons.
Yeah, I think one of the most poignant memories I have when I was young, I really didn't understand it, and he was a bodeguero, was that there was this man just looking very disheveled. He brought him into the bodega and said, I'm going to cook you some soup. And I was like so scared because I thought we were going to get robbed. This man was like not looking in the best state. And my dad proudly made him soup and like fed him and let him talk. And then he said, I know this man fought the war. Just to be that kind of person. But that's it. There was no like talking about, tell me your tales of woe. Nope. I'm going to give you some soup. Here you go. That's it. And go. Like that was my dad. And I kind of respected just his way of being. It's like you knew what you were going to get.
No, that's beautiful. And I feel like you don't even think of that. You don't think of the people in the street like, oh, my dad probably feels like that or things like that, because you don't know what's going on in his head. He's probably so quiet because he's still processing.
Yeah.
So it's scary to think that he could have been that person. That's probably why he helps out. So, well, we admire your dad. Thanks to your dad for fighting the war.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you for this opportunity.
Who's next? Massiel, you ready? Massiel, that says on page 14.
I'm not ready, pero ahí vamos. All right, well, I'm going to start on page 16 and then I'll hop around a little as well. My piece is called Me Van a Matar por las Mujeres, and I purposely chose this title because one is like a very famous Anthony Santos song, and like my dad was like an Anthony Santos fan. And I felt like it represented a lot. I'm like, I wonder why you like that song so much. So here it is. The relationship with my dad is as dead as the cementerio we leave Papa flowers. I don't blame him for being so in love with his country that he picked up all its bad habits and now spends 6 months here and 6 months there, living his best life, or maybe running away from it. If Papa were still alive, maybe, just maybe, he would be a different person. Papa would have never allowed any of it. My grandfather, the best man I ever knew, played Dad's role better than Papi himself. He gave me a taste of Daddy's love, y aunque fuera ajeno, se sentía verdadero. I'm going to skip to page 18. I wish I could utter the words I write on paper, tell him how I feel, and have him hold me as we cry together, singing to Jose Jose once more. I wish he wasn't a stranger and would come to my doorstep to take me on the promised dates before he met his rubia. But this isn't a story about me. This is about Papi and how my culture accepts men just like him. About how Dominican men pueden nacer y deshacer sin la necesidad de pedir perdón. He is still your father, and you must love him no matter what he does, they insist. No matter how much he hurts you by being a real man. He is still yours. Regardless if he wishes to die in the DR, repeatedly cheats, only checks up on you on random occasions, forgets your birthday, spends his dólares on mujeres del barrio, leaving your mom with 3 children in the States, while he enjoys a presidente en la galería de Mocha City on a Wednesday. Your mom works 2 jobs, and his daughter writes poems that he will never read. Even if he never showed you how to ride a bike, left you craving the feeling of being loved in your teens, thinks a 2-minute conversation makes up for a lost time, and never fucking apologizes. Even if he was the first man to break your hearts, mommy and yours, he is still yours. He is still yours. He is still your papi, even if it hurts you, even if. Thank you.
Thank you for. Oof, this piece. It just like, I feel like it gives me permission to feel pissed. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading it. Maybe I'm just projecting. But it's true. Like a real man, los mujeres de verdad, los hombres de verdad, they don't fall in love with putas and all this stuff. Like, yo, this piece is like, damn, you went in. Like you were not holding back. You guys read.
Fue como un desahogo total. Like I was pissed writing it, crying, then I'm like laughing and then going back to crying again. It was really hard for me to write this piece because it, like when I saw the submission, I'm like, oh my God, this is a sign, because this has been living in my notebook for like a really long time. And it was a hard piece for me to write because I've never said any of the things that I said in this piece to anybody. Like not even my mom knows, like not even my siblings, like no one. So when I had this book in my hand and I read this piece to like my siblings, they were like, oh shit, like you really said that? Like you put that out there? Like, and I'm like, yeah, I did. Luckily, Papi doesn't know English like that, so he ain't gonna read it. But I read this to my mom and yeah, she didn't take it. Like, you know, like Dominicans don't like when this shit is aired out. You know what I mean? Like, she was like, ¿por qué tú dijiste todo eso? Like, they're gonna think. And I'm like, I mean, I'm not lying though. Like, it may not be good to say it, but I'm not lying though. So, I mean, at least for me, that's how I feel and that's how I experienced it. But yeah, this piece was a tough one. But when I like published it, I felt so like relieved in a way, because I felt like even if my dad never reads this, I still said everything that I had to say. And I don't know if one day I'll ever have the courage to like read it and like low-key translate it for him. But I did with my mom, and she was not like, she got it, but she was like, no, eso no es verdad. Esa parte no es verdad. Saca esa parte de ahí. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was waiting for him for like 2 days. What are you talking about? Like, you know, and I feel like half of it, it was like, she doesn't want us to have that memory of him. Like, aside from everything, you know, you never want your kids to like feel that way towards the father of your kids, but at the same time, I'm just like, no, it's like this, and this is how I see it, and that's why I feel the way that I feel, you know. But yeah, thank you so much.
Like, you're allowed to put it out there. It's your experience. Like, it's your perspective. So how's she gonna? But parents do that, right? Parents are like, no, that didn't happen. Yo no te daba correazo. You're not traumatized. That's not true.
Right? Yo nunca le puse la mano a esa niña, mind you. And then as soon as you see a chancleta, I would be like this. Like, what? Mommy says uno y ya. Yo estaba like, whatever it was that I was doing, crying, bawling on the floor, she would say uno, and I'm like, that's it, swallow it. Whatever it is, tuck it in, because viene la chancleta.
Yeah. Apart from like the 9 that you had any of these experiences, on top of that, you have to be like, Oh, no, de eso no se habla. You can't air your dirty laundry either. Like, you can't talk about your father like that. You can't let the world know. What are you talking about? Like, everybody else has had this. Well, not everybody else. Some of you guys did not have that experience. I can relate. Like, I am glad you shared it. If anyone knows me and everything that I'm always saying, whether it's like the Cuenticos workshop or anytime I talk to any of the writers, I'm like, I want it to be raw. Like, I want to feel all the feelings, and anything you think you have to hold back, no, I want you to tell me. Like, I need you to write it, because then like we all feel it like so strongly. So
yeah, this was a very raw piece, like raw, like I used real names. Like I shouted everybody out. Like my sister was like, you did not just put the real name. I'm sorry.
Your mom is stopping you right now.
You see what I mean? No, this is the most realistic.
she's about to show up on the live like, excuse me, she's lying. That none of that is true. Take it out.
Right? Yo. All right, skip me, because she ain't gonna stop.
We'll come back. We'll come back.
Thank you.
We'll come back to that. Put a pin in it. Okay, who's next? Massiel, Nairobi. Nairobi, you're next. Page 77.
Okay, first of all, yo, I'm dying with you guys. Ustedes me tienen riendo. Like, whether it's like tears, I'm trying to like hold back from some of these stories, or just the chat right now. Oh my God, somebody said something about selective, convenient amnesia. Ay, Dios mío. Our parents have a lot of that sometimes, you know? But I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of background. So this is actually my first time publishing a piece. I'm not, you know, foreign to writing is something that I always love to do, pero tú sabes, going for the first one is always the monumental thing. So I appreciate that I was able to do that in a space so dedicated to our culture, that we're able to uplift each other's stories and just kind of hear how similar in vein our childhoods were. Si no fue una correa o los cuernos que pegaron los papi, you know, and all the good memories too. So I appreciate the space. But I'm going to go ahead on page 77 and read Papi Ya No Está. Yo, your dad was mad funny. Tío was a tigre who wouldn't let anybody cross him even if they tried. No matter what, Tío venía donde sea para venir a pasar tiempo conmigo. My cousins had more memories with Papi than I ever did. Dichoso tú entonces, pájaro de cuentas, was always my sour-ass reply. They wanted me to know, que he would always ask about me, but I never really knew how much because Papi nunca estuvo. I trauma erased like a motherfucker, but if you ask my older sister, she know the tea. Papi ya no está, pero la memoria de su vida todavía me toca el oído. O sea, el sonido de Pinky todavía le suena a los que escuchan los cuentos. Papi knew how to be reassuring even in his absence. Tu papá era un negro bello. His black skin is still my favorite thing about him. I saw so much beauty in what the world loved to hate the most. I see it in me, in my features, our wide noses, our 4A hair. It reminds me of the purpose of lineage. Con él aprendí quién soy. Pinky siempre vivía en problemas. Tu papá no era fácil. Me dicen las tías que conocía mejor que lo conocía mejor que nadie. Me dicen las tías que lo conocía mejor que nadie. Ajá, pero ya es fácil vivir aquí. He came to the United States when he was a teenager. He was an immigrant with a laughable accent. His 6-foot-tall demeanor and black skin intimidated. It was the 90s, and the city he migrated to wasn't too used to seeing faces like his. Ese moreno no tenía que dar muela para buscar mujeres, pero eso sí, era un mujeriego. El machismo further baited him into hardship. The consequence of his promiscuous exploits resulted in the separation of my parents, a relatively obscure family tree, and a positive HIV diagnosis. Even though I was in the 7th grade when I found out, I knew his time with me was limited. I was always so convinced he wouldn't be there for me. Dios sabe lo que hace. Poverty kept us apart, but the system separated us. It's no coincidence that I decided to dedicate my career to fixing public policies that hurt families like mine. As a kid, I remember him feeling so far from me. To me, he might as well have been a donde el diablo tiró las 3 voces. El dinero nunca alcanzó para ir a verlo, pero la primera vez que yo fui donde él no me vino a ver. Mami siempre estuvo, pero todo le fue duro porque lo hizo sola, a donde el corazón inclina, el pie camina. It's one of the Yeah. Con él aprendí la ausencia. I developed a profound disdain for men due to my wounded relationship with Papi. I internalized his absence. My fear of abandonment wouldn't allow for any emotional attachments. I used to say things like, los hombres dominicanos no sirven. My resentment would seep through until I learned to acknowledge my father's life struggles. After he passed away, I came to uncover details about him. And ahora me doy cuenta que ellos también tienen heridas. Él se murió y ni bien pudo vivir sus 39 años. Papi ya no está, pero todavía vive. To those who never really knew their dads, don't despair. We don't ever really know ourselves fully, and life evolves. The lessons follow us behind these fickle, fine lines of life and death. Con él aprendí a perdonar. Cool. So that's it. I read the whole piece. I wasn't trying to, y'all, but it just kind of flowed that way.
No, thank you for that. I mean, to get the whole gist of the essay, you had to go through it all. It was beautiful. I appreciate it. And also, like, it goes back to the theme of us not really knowing these men, them not being a part of our lives. But then at the end, we come to this forgiveness, this realization that they're also people that go through things, that go through flaws. And the fact that you mentioned, you know, the AIDS diagnosis, that's, oh my God, in our culture, you definitely don't talk about that. So you brought that up.
Mhm.
You brought up his mujeriego ways and everything. But it's like, at the end, it's like, I love the final paragraph where, like, we don't really know ourselves. So it's like, there's so much you don't know about him that you have to forgive.
Yes, and I will just leave it on this note. I mean, tú sabes, uno siempre tiene like, you always have your reasons to feel angry. And it's such an interesting walk between life and death. Like, when my dad passed away, ya van a ser como 11 años, like on the 27th of December. And the holidays always get tough, but look at the irony where I'm able to now just speak up on my father, understand, like, whether it's in life or death, uno siempre sabe que, like, tú vas a tener una relación con tu papá, or like with whatever person it is that brought you into this world, that you feel like really provided you a sense of understanding. And for me, I ironically learned more about him after death. And I feel like I even got closer to him. So I'm really grateful to you all and for this experience. And just the last thing I'll say is, you know, thank your dads, no matter what. Just thank them for who they are and what they were able to mean for you.
I don't know. I feel like that should just, like, be the staple of the conversation. So we can just, like, end it on that note. We're like, okay, that was the whole point of this, guys. But no, we have who's next? We have Rafael is next. So let's move on to his piece.
Alrighty, thank you. And I think I'm the last one. But I'm gonna try to avoid reading most of it, but I think I'm gonna be the same and read the majority of it too. It's not too much. I titled this one Enseñando por Ejemplo. My father exemplifies many Dominican stereotypes: suave looks, hardworking, and an estimable life teacher. He rocks a slick 1970s hairdo straight out of Greece, with a comb always nearby, ready to make his hair wavier than needed. He has a slim figure, not weak though, because he enjoyed lifting weights, an example that fueled my journey to become physically fit and athletically push myself to excel in sports. He still rocks an almost six-pack and brags about how he had it, a 12-pack at his peak. Growing up, I didn't have all the Jordans I wanted, and we moved around constantly. We lived a nomadic lifestyle, resulting in the inability to join desired clubs or after-school activities because I would be forced to quit a few weeks later. I was also resentful because he was always working and seldom around to spend time with us. I didn't grasp that his absence meant he was fajándose para asegurarse that there was always food on the table and a roof over our heads. After the bitterness subsided, I eventually came to appreciate how I could quickly adapt to different environments because of said circumstances. From rural Bonao in the Dominican Republic to rural Maine, to the suburbs in Huntsville, Alabama, to the rural Athens, Alabama, and most recently to the suburbs in Worcester, Mass. And being able to assimilate and integrate into any environment or situation was one of the most incredible things I've learned to do. He doesn't talk much. Papi leads by example, working long hours without complaints. Papi seldom enjoys a vacation porque hay que trabajar para ganarse lo cuarto. His religious beliefs prohibit working on the Saturday, sábado, which proved challenging to find employment that respected said practices while honoring his work ethic. Because carrying the weight as the sole breadwinner of a family of 4 in a foreign country where English is not his primary language and where the politics are not that nice to immigrants, no está fácil. I vividly remember a moment where he stood up for himself. After 3 years of working nonstop without fail, he attempted to take a 2-week vacation. His supervisor gave him the green light, but as the date approached, he backtracked and forced him to cancel his time off, obligated him to return to work as there were apartments that weren't up to par and needed his skill set. At that moment, Papi stood 10 toes down on his request to spend time with his family. Despite being a reliable employee, they threatened to fire him if he didn't comply with their demands. He quit. Papi dedicated his time to what he believed in and was passionate about his beliefs rather than follow greed and money. Serving as one of the prime examples of my youth, he showed me that it's best to live a life you want rather than live by someone else's expectations for you. Through his sacrifices for our family, nos enseñó to fight for what you love, exigir respeto, and provide for your family. I'm forever grateful for the lesson of standing up for oneself and the values we hold, especially today when money can be dangled in front of you, stealing your morals and beliefs. I honor my father by leading an exemplary life, diligent in my work ethic, persevering through obstacles, and humble enough to know when to ask for help. Like my father, I stand firm on my beliefs, refuse to sacrifice my morals, and honor my family values. For molding me into this person, I am forever grateful. Cion Papi, enseñando por ejemplo.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. You know why? Because like, wow, like coming from an immigrant family, coming from immigrant parents, you're taught to keep your head down, just assimilate, just go with what they say, especially at work. Like you have all this, like, you don't belong there type of attitude, right? But he stood up for himself. He stood up for himself. He put his foot down, like, no, this goes against my beliefs. I do need my job. I have to make that money. But no, you're not going to treat me like that. So that's what's up. I like that.
Facts. That was such a defining moment that he took, spending time with his family instead of, just being pulled left and right at his job. So I always keep that in my mind whenever I get that kind of a work call where I'm compromising my beliefs.
And I know you're like more into like the gaming and everything. So I don't know if have you published other essays, or this is like your father is also the first topic that you're touching on?
No, I've actually published other stuff as well. I was just so intrigued when I saw that Dominicans are united and que estamos unidos y todo eso. And I was like, oh, let me actually see, because I normally do sci-fi and a lot of self-help and stuff like that, blogging. And so when I saw this, I said, you know what, this is actually pretty cool. I love impromptu conversations and impromptu writing. And then as soon as I had the idea, I was like, hey, Dad, what do you think about this? ¿Qué tú piensas de esto? And he's like, that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. I was like, all right, tell me how did it happen? How did you work? What was the conversation like? I was like, no, this is what esto lo que pasó. They said, 3 months out, you're approved to go out, da 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 da. And then like 2 days before, they're like, you got to come back to work. And he's like, no, you know what? He's like, you're the only one here. Tú eres el único que puede hacer el trabajo. You have to. And it's like, I don't have to, because if you don't authorize this, I'm not coming back. And they're like, you need this job. And he's like, I'm going on vacation with my family. I was like, damn, Dad, you got balls, Dad. Like, what's up?
Family comes first. That's
Yes.
right there. Family comes first. But now let's open it up. Like you just shared what your father said about this story. What did everybody else, like, what did your family say? I know Massiel talked on it. Nico talked on it. Have you guys shared it with your family? Like, what has been the reaction? You're talking about your dads. Jump in, anybody, go ahead.
Well, I'll start off. My sister, she published her own work first, and you know, she definitely talked about Papi before, but so it wasn't like foreign, because I think everybody in the family, once they read her book, they were like, "Diablo, pero esta tipa está hablando de muchas cosas," and and so you're just kind of like, you know what? Just like it's like my sister to pave the way, and I just kind of like was like, "This okay." Sharing it with my mom, I actually didn't tell nobody. I was like, yo voy a hacer esto like bien escondida. Like I'm very like shy like that. But at the same time, once I started to share it, and I was like, fuck it. Like whether it be as it may, I think the biggest thing that we as children have to confront with our fathers or with our parents is knowing that our relationship with them is our own. And just because, like I mentioned, like with my cousins in the first page, you know, people may have different perceptions of your father. That doesn't mean that your story is not true. ¿Tú me entiendes? So, aunque ellos lo lean y dicen, eso no fue verdad, mi amor. Eso fue la perspectiva de Nairoby Sanchez. And that's where we're going to leave it.
I love that. It's your experience, it's your perspective. I had the same reaction from a lot of the people that did La Doña. Like they spoke on their grandmother the way that the rest of the family were like, no, that's not it. But yes, you have permission to write on your experience, your perspective. Nobody could get mad at that because that's you, that's your experience, that's your truth. So yeah. So thank you for not letting that hold your back. Who else? Give me reactions from your families.
So I called I said that my grandma said my father was a charlatan. So when I was reading her the piece before it was even, you know, published, I was like, abuela, estoy escribiendo algo y quiero expresarme como me sentía como de papi, y estoy hablando de la historia de él. And he said que se lo leyera. So alguna parte were in English, you know. So some of it I didn't read it to her because she would have been like, we didn't grow up like that. It was not that bad. So I mentioned the part que ella oraba, pero que lo llamaba charlatán. So, ay, Ari, tú no puedes decir eso, pero tú lo dijiste. So now is a thing. So she just wanted like all the sweet things, and like, no, sometimes just like Abril says, sweet and sour. You gotta be both.
It's so funny to me, like how, and I thought about it when you said it, Anyeli, and Massiel too. Like I think that your stories really stood out to me because it's like the airing of dirty laundry, like is so sinful to in our culture.
Yeah.
And people get so upset, and it's like, but I didn't realize until the first thing that we published, La Doña, because I remember when we did La Doña, Angie has said, oh, did you share this with your mom? Did you share it with your family? And I said, no, I blocked my whole family on Instagram.
Bruh.
And she's like, Abril, no. And so this time around, and I'm seeing on the chat too, my cousins are on the chat. And this time around, I said, you know what? I'm a, stand 10 toes down. I forgot who said that, but somebody said stand 10 toes down. And I shared it on my Instagram, and I just have cousins and stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I feel a little bit more comfortable talking shit about my dad than I do about my mom, because, I feel like there's a distinction there, but it's so important because it's your truth. And like you said, like that's your experience with this person, and everyone's going to have a different experience. The people that go to my dad's store are going to be like, oh my God, your dad is the best. He's so nice. He gives me chips for free sometimes. And I'm like, that's great for you. But like my dad, I have a different experience. Bruh. Or if I ask my mom, she has a different experience with my dad than I do. And so that's why I had to make that distinction of like, he could be a great dad to me, but he might be a terrible husband or a terrible father or a terrible partner, So you have to give recognition to people's truths, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I think that's an important note to keep in mind, the truth that we live, because oftentimes, and I just put it in the chat about revisionist history, like that happens over and over, where it's just like, no, pero que pasó de esta manera, o que, no, pero nosotros no te tratábamos mal. But it's like, I'm telling you, we can recount the story and like, yeah, there might be some slight things that are different, but you can't tell me what my perspective of it was, or like how I feel. So like, if I felt like you guys shunned me, that's my perspective. That's what I lived. And like, that rang true in like so many of the stories. Like what Abril was saying with Nairobi and Anyeli's stories, like when I first read them, number one, you have like the death, like ending in that somber note. It always has a particular, key to it. But like, there's just so many things in that like, even if my dad didn't live that, I recognize an uncle. Like I had an uncle who had substance abuse and he died, from that. So it's like I connect to it and I live that. And like, to put that out there, no other folks are really doing that. Like you mentioned that in most Dominican families, it's just like, a ti nadie va a querer hablar contigo ni te va a contar nada. So like, to put that out there, I commend y'all. Like my father, I shared basic stuff and he just like slyly laughed. Like he was like, que yo no hice bien la tarea. And I was like, yeah, Pops, it was zero. Yo no creo que sea verdad. And I'm like, all right, go back to 5th grade and dig up my teacher and we'll talk to
I
her.
had the same experience too. Oh my goodness. Like, I don't know if they show a different kind of math or whatever over there. Same thing happened to me where it was like algebra and it was solving for X and it's like, yeah, this is the greatest answer. I was like, oh, right, let me go. And it's like F. And it's like, and then they get mad that you got an F for the day. And it's like, how did you get an F? You need to get an 80 and above. And it's like, porque yo te di la tarea y después la profesora dijo, what is this? This is not what we asked. It's like, do we need to review some material with you, young? I'm like, I asked my father for some help and my mom, and they both were just like, y di que eran profesores, but I don't know.
So our parents listening to you guys, so it's one, we have this belief que la ropa sucia se lava en casa. Meaning you don't air out what happens in your house, you don't air out any issues, aunque se estén cayendo del hambre, aunque estén, even if you have violence in your house, whatever the case may be, mental illness, sickness, eso no se cuenta. I deal with it to this day. My mom calls me, she's like, no le cuente eso a nadie. And I'm just like, what? Like, it's like, I'm not I'm not a megaphone, I keep secrets. But, there's always that thing that everybody knows, but nobody is saying it openly, right? Because ya todo el mundo se llamó por teléfono y se dijo, mira esto, pero no se lo cuente a nadie. And then when you're done with that person, you call the next person and say, mira, me llamaron, me contaron esto, pero no se lo cuento a nadie. And then you create this whole chain and everybody is sitting at that dinner table knowing what's going on, but no one says anything out loud, right? And then there's the part that our parents, the majority of our parents, at least my mom's generation, who's in her 70s, they didn't finish school. They had to work. They were working the fields. They were in farms. If they got up to the 8th grade, that was a privilege. So they carry that embarrassment that they didn't finish school. So when you bring something to them, y tú se lo estás aplicando, they don't want to feel, some of them might take it personal and say, oh, you're trying to make me look stupid. You're trying to make me look like I don't know anything, but that's not really the case. Which is why I believe our parents had such a huge emphasis on at least the first generation going to school, right? Like that was the main thing. Finish school, go to college. I don't care what you couldn't go into the arts, but finish school, right? Lo que te deja dinero para que tú no pase hambre, be a teacher, be a lawyer, be a doctor, whatever gives you money. That's what you need to go to school for. Now our kids, we're like, yeah, be whatever you want. But that's that generation from back then. And I was just dying, Massiel, because you're talking about your dad, and then you're talking about how your mom is like, yeah, eso no pasó así, and then she's in the background like, are you talking about me? Like, I was like, oh my God, did she hear Massiel reread the story, and now she's tight, and she's like, I'm just glad que un chancletazo didn't fly through the because our parents are not above un chancletazo, even if we are in our 30s, 40s, whatever the case may be, they're not above that.
I thought she was gonna bust into the screen for sure.
Right.
Like that curtain
I
was
just
gonna
hear
come
her say,
down.
I didn't see it, but I had to like go real in on her real quick. I'm like, cállate que estoy en un live, porque si no.
Is that why you pulled the curtain? I didn't know. I thought you were fighting her back, like, you know, real quietly.
I'm like, because like she has this thing where she's not gonna stop calling my name until you like respond. Pero you can't respond with a que, because you say que.
It's over.
And it's silent. And you're like, bro, you gotta go downstairs. Nah, pa que me pasara esto. And I'm like, are you serious, bro? Like,
no, es el otro chapbook. Ven, pásame eso. That's the next
also,
one, right?
Massiel, you might be ready for your dad to know about this story, because somebody is going to go and translate it to him. Okay? Un chismoso en tu familia. Somebody is going to pick up your book and say, oh, Massiel escribió un ensayo. Let's just buy it and see what she wrote.
bueno.
And they're going to go translate it in
But
their own words to your dad.
But we're at least gonna make money. We're gonna make the money. They gotta buy the book. That we gotta start charging chismosos for the chismes. Like that's what I'm writing for. You're gonna charge them for the chismes.
And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, Massiel is like hiding this from her family, but this shit is in stores. Like, this is in bookstores and in the Dominican Studies Institute. It's archived. Massiel's story about her dad is archived.
Well, Massiel dragged even uncles. Like, that's one thing about her story.
I was just about to say that. I was like, nobody was safe in the making of this submission.
No, girl, but we felt that. Like, I felt it. As I was reading it, I was like, diablo, coño. Pero hay mucha cosa aquí. Sorry, excuse the, I'm, you know, the Dominican side of me. I'm going on mute.
Abril said everybody.
Don't go on mute, unmute.
No, Nairobi, comparte, ven. We all get it.
Danos chisme.
No, eso mismo que I was saying. I'm like, you know, cuando uno lee, like, that's the thing that I want y'all to like leave with, like, just as a compliment to you and everybody's here is writing. When you're like reading these stories, I don't know about y'all, pero yo me estaba riendo because they're so relatable, even in the sad parts. Like, and as I'm hearing you guys speak, it brings a smile to my face. I know I don't stop like laughing, but it's because of that. Some of these stories, aunque sea, like I had mentioned before, aunque sea scandalous, whatever, you're saying it's true. As much as other people might want to like say, que no hable de eso. Si uno habla de eso, por lo menos, como alguien puso en el chat, you could heal from it. You know what I mean? The first part of that healing process is opening up, is talking about it. It's why a lot of these things, we're breaking generational curses by even doing this writing, because whether we realize it or not, this is shadow work. This is work that,
You're mute.
You're muted, Nairobi.
Yo no sé cómo. That was weird. Can you hear
Now
me?
your camera is off. That last part we didn't get to hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, but I was just saying that in general, I think that the words, like, people just need to hear it, because that's how we heal from it, you know?
Yes, writing is definitely therapeutic, no matter if you're writing happy thoughts or sad thoughts, your trauma, whatever the case may be. Once you put it on the paper, you could feel a little bit of relief at least. So I wanted to know, for those of you who's your first time being published, how did this process feel like to you? Was it nerve-wracking? Did you have to go through the motions? Did you at some point hesitate and say, nah, I'm not doing this? What if it gets chosen? I'm not ready for that. You know, how do you feel about it?
I didn't think mine was gonna get chosen. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this because I said I was gonna write something, and this was the perfect opportunity to write about my dad. I've been wanting to do that for years, but I just didn't have like not a reason to, but writing is hard.
A motivation. So
yeah,
Elizabeth
yeah. So that was
submitted with the intention that it wasn't gonna get chosen.
exactly, because I'm like, oh, gives me a way to write about my dad. And also because my cousin, my sister, and I had interviewed my dad like with video, because my dad is now the only, well, this was before his brother passed away. He's now the only living descendant of my as you see in the story, my grandfather, great Angel Rodríguez, he comes up a lot because it tenía fama aquí en Granada. I'm in DR right now, so that's why I can say that. And like everybody knew him, everybody respected him. But my father was one that wasn't like him. My father was very calm, he's ambitious, but he didn't share his dreams because they would just make fun of him. So like the fact that he was the first one to leave the campo, he went to the capital, he joined the military, then they let him go to the States. And then from there, he fell in love with the US and with the opportunity. He was just like, I'm gonna make it here, I'm gonna make this happen. And he couldn't go because he was in the military, but he sent his brothers, he worked hard to make sure that they could get out there. And then slowly everybody went to the US, and we got a little like village in Brooklyn, So I just wanted to share that because I'm like, it's not always like the immigrant story is twisted so many different ways, but we never really see like, damn, like our families did a lot in this country that siempre lo rechaza, no matter what. Nobody that has left this country, no one that has left this country has had experiences that were flores y arcoíris. It's hard. It doesn't matter if you have money or not. Once you don't know a language, they treat you like shit. And like our generation, we're college educated and we're like trying to make it better for the next generation, and we still get treated like shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but I'm like, no, you got to focus on the positive because we're going to make it better. And that's my dad's goal. It's always been, hey, we came here, we worked hard, we left our family behind to have a better life for the next generation. You have to be better than us. And that's what I told my daughter too. You got to be better than me, because that is the whole point, to show that it's not just, one-sided. So yeah, so it was this, but I didn't think it was gonna get chosen. I'm like, I never wrote something before, like whatever. But at least I got it out there, And then but I didn't share it with anyone, FYI, except for my sister, my cousin that we did the interview, and my girlfriends, and that's it. Wow. And my dad, I'm gonna give him the book for Christmas. So.
Well, thank you for having for losing that little bit of fear and submitting to the Cuenticos, because that's what it's all about. Once you submit one, después te da seguidilla. This is how Henry is here.
Yes, I'm ready.
Henry submits to all, and I tell people, look, we're not the only folks publishing Latino authors, and so please submit other places too. Después piensan que es un traque que ustedes tienen conmigo. And just FYI, I haven't read any of these stories. I don't read them when they get submitted. I read them when I have time. Jamberly is the only one who reads them. She's the only one responsible for accepting and rejecting these pieces. So it's never me. So I que diga, oh, que tú conoces a Angie, que esto que lo otro. No, it's not Angie. Angie just takes care of the production and the publishing and getting the funds for the project and making sure that it gets out.
The cover, she does the covers and everything. I don't know how to do everything, but I gotta catch up.
So who else wants to share what their experience was with getting their piece published?
So
go on, Luz.
First. Luz, you go first.
No, I just wanted to, I wanted to share real quick that I told my dad I was writing this, and he's like, I know, no haga eso, because no haga eso. Like there was like his shyness came out. And then when I really talked about the piece with my sisters, and it was kind of interesting. I have 4 sisters, but 3 of us got together and just got to talk about it. And one of the things the themes that kept talking about was the fact that his silence was just so insidious, because it created a lot of problems. Like we could never have like these long discussions, right? But yet at the flip side, we love what a lovely human being he is. Like you can never ask him to be like, oh, someone's in need and they need something, he'll be the first person to get it. And it's something like that we struggle with because, you know, everyone loves a person that does service nonstop, but then sometimes you just need someone to talk to. So that was kind of like the duality we struggled with as siblings, and we talked about it a lot. So we admire so many of the things that my dad did. That was so wonderful. So the piece kind of brought back a lot of like the emotions that we've all experienced in different ways, and how happy we were that when people connected with my dad because of the things he did, that was great, you know, and we loved it for him, but we also wanted
your
more.
Sisters agreed with your perspective?
Yeah, like his silence.
Shared perspective.
Yeah, it was a shared perspective. Like that's all you could get from him. Like that silence was so strong. He was steady and silent.
Wow. And then speaking of silence, then you just, as a child, how do you feel about that, about your dad not speaking? Because that means he's not having conversations with you. And if he is speaking, it's to give you, you know, una orden, or, you know, or, you know, instructions on doing something or whatnot, and not necessarily having these conversations with you on how was your school day? Like my son tells me to shut up because I be trying to have conversations with him, and he rolls his eyes and he's like, here we go again, another conversation.
No, actually, you know, this is the thing. Someone said, I think it was Henry that said, like, all of a sudden, like the leniency for fathering is different with the grandkids, because my dad era un perico con los hijos míos. Oh, ¿tú quieres hacer esto? Oh, vamos a jugar un juego. Yes. He made up a song with my daughter, and I'm like,
you always get a different version.
Yo,
he hates it when I'm like, ¿y esta cantarita? ¿Dónde salió? He's like...
I say that to my son because my mom is so different with my child, and I guess it just kind of irks me a little bit, right? Because I'm like, I know who you were as a parent, and now with my kid, it's all roses.
Oh yeah, it's kind of that, and
I tell my kid, my mom was not like that when I was a kid. Okay, so I be trying to shatter his grandma dream, which is kind of messed up. But it's like, that's not who, and I try to tell him stories and he looks at me like, what are you talking about? Grandma is not like that. And I'm like, ese amor de Dios que tú veas ahora. Eso es ahora.
No, y habla un tron con mis hijos.
Llevaban un chacletazo, de boche, de todo. My mom now, un amor. And I'd be like, wow, look at that.
No, that's the thing. Like,
my children get the good parts now.
No, that was the thing. Like, yo no me recuerdo boche de papi, ni regaño, esto así. I remember he's like, ya, tú no quieres estar bien, ya. Like, él era como, he was like that kind of temperament. But then I have kids, and all of a sudden he has all this stuff he wants to share. And I'm like, Diablo. Like, and we're like, but to give him credit, he has opened up a lot more, that he shares a lot more.
Now is when you're really getting to know your dad.
Yeah, so I have to admit that this piece was like, it was healing, because I was able to connect with my sister with the things that we wanted to hear from him and we didn't get to hear from him. But at the same time, like, respect the fact, like, he was dealing with a lot, you know, he was working a bodega. He talked about the war, some things about the war I understood because of the pictures, how traumatic it was. There's still the things that he hid about his true feelings from the war. And the fragmented grenade that I mentioned, I never understood how deep that was until I saw his scars as an adult. And he still goes to the VA for those scars never heal. Like, he still wears like a back brace, you know. So I'm very fortunate that he's alive, but he always feels like, you know, I would have not been here. Like there was a chance he wasn't going to be here. So I'm grateful for this piece, because I really enjoy hearing all your stories, because I feel like your dads are like part of my family too, in a weird way. Even though my dad is the quiet one, you're the one, you know, you guys have like little fragments of my dad too.
they're all tios. I feel like
Right.
we're all each other, you know. I think what was interesting as a theme was like how our dads deal with mental health. And like I think you see it a lot, like parents who drink or parents who smoke or parents who hit or parents who do whatever. Like you realize like you start to think about like what their parents were doing to them and then how they were raising us. But I think that a lot of those things are you know, it says a lot, like, you know, the things that we let slide, especially with men, like we make them suppress a lot of these emotions. Like Henry, the story of that barber, like it boils my blood, but it also cracks me up because it's like we really let men go out into the world thinking this, that like, oh, the kids are the woman's problem, it's the mom's problem, is not my problem. And it's like, no, like you know, this should be a partnership. We should be holding men more responsible for these things, but not just because we need more, like women need more help or the moms need more help, but because that's such a joy. Like you should want to be part of your child's life. Like you should want to be involved in that. And I was gonna say earlier too that like I liked Henry's story a lot because I feel like it was perfect after my story because Henry's the exact kind of like person that I'm trying to describe. When I said at the end of my story, like, oh, this next generation of Dominican men are going to be better. Like, you know, the men in this room are perfect examples of that. Like they got, you know, when you have a good experience with a good Dominican dad, or even if you don't, you're going to want to be better. You want to emulate the good things. And that's going to just like, you know, it's a domino effect. Like our parents were in survivor mode. And I feel like now we're trying to, like, slowly every generation, we're trying to live a softer and softer and softer life. Like we shouldn't have to, you know, have the same struggles or be in the same survival mode that our parents, our grandparents were in. Like we're trying to, you know, that's why like when they look at, you know, the grandkids and stuff, they're like, damn, these kids live lavish. They got iPads, they got computers, they got toys. Yes, they should live lavish. Isn't that what you worked so hard for, so that your next, you know, your lineage could live lavish? That was the point.
Yeah.
At least I would hope.
My mom be
You
like,
have to send me the Venmo afterwards because I got to pay you for this promotion.
Oh yes, I got you.
when my son was smaller, my mother was like, no le compres ropa de children's place. No, because to her that was too cheap for her grandson.
That was children's Gucci back then. Children's place was
girl, it still is. What?
It really is. It really is.
She'd be like, tú tienes que comprarle Nike, and she would name all these name brands, and I'm like,
I ain't get Nike though.
Right.
Favor shoes.
Oh my God, Luz.
You went to Payless?
Conway.
You lucky.
Payless was it for us. Exactly. Payless,
You got Payless?
Los zapatos de medio uso.
Ya tú sabes.
Pero si tú lo píntalo tan nuevo.
Oh, and my dad.
Yo tiene unos zapatos que te sirven. Yo te voy a traer esta ropa de él.
Y como yo hacía eso en la capital, yo sé lo mismo como hacerlo nuevecitos. Look, brand new.
The shoe polish was no joke.
Yo, my dad was the shoe polisher. It's like, oh, look, that's brand new. You can't even tell. Look at that. We don't have to go shopping for your shoes no more. Look at that.
Anyeli, you want to share your experience now? You're muted.
Yes, I was typing. I'm like, I got my prom dress from El Mundo, 8th grade. Anyways, I still want prom queen though. Had to walk the runway.
Okay, all right. Your mom wants to be like, te lo dije.
Así mismo tenía que ver como una niña. But a lot of what inspired me to write, I did used to get a lot of comments from my college papers and like, you're a good writer, but I never believed that, because especially when you learn English and then you go to a bad high school. I went to GW. First of all, the education is not that great, maybe because there's a lot of students, there's a lot of things happening at that school. So when I got to college, I remember that my first essay, I never capitalized the I. So it started that, like, that small. Like my whole journey for writing, it started that small. So I never got to believe it. And then, but I was always able to like tap into my emotions and let everything out, even if the grammars were wrong. And then I seen during the 2020, I saw the Dominican writers community, and I still never thought about it. Like, oh, I think these people are cool, but I still didn't see myself to be part of it, or never thought that I would be. And then my father passed away in 2020 in November. And for Father's Day, I was like, oh, this is different. And I wanted it to make it happen because the submission was prior to Father's Day. And I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm gonna honor him by writing and maybe getting to know more stories that I never knew about him. So I will call my grandma and I will ask her like, oh, ¿qué pasó cuando papi se fue para Puerto Rico? Like trying to figure out everything out because he was never in my life. He was one of those dads that also believe that, you know, the grandma, the mom, they'll handle the little girl. So I wanted to know more about him. My grandma was like, well, you should ask your mom because they were together around that time as well. I asked my mom, she was like, oh, you should ask your grandma. Like it was a whole thing, but I was able to get the right proper summary of whatever I could. And it still made sense. And it was a process of research almost. And it was good. Because I knew I was going to get somewhere, regardless of if it was good or bad. It was a story, and it was there to be told. And I did that. So now I got the confidence to continue writing, and I wanted to get into De Eso No Se Habla, but I was so busy, and I couldn't finish the project. I was so sad, but I knew that something better would come.
I'm sure Jamberly would take you. You heard Jamberly? Anyeli wants to submit to De Eso No Se Habla.
Okay.
Girl, me too. Vamos para allá.
Yeah. I'm still.
What's the deadline? It's still there?
No.
It's still time?
The deadline is over, but
Yes,
like I'm just now starting to like finish up with the ones I had. So there's like 2 or 3 people who haven't responded, and I really want the exact 30. So just slide it in.
Slide it. I would see.
There you go.
Merges in. But yeah, it is definitely easy. Once you get your first piece out, it's like, that's it. Suelta ese miedo, suelta whatever thought you had in your head, just go with it and just write. It's what you see, is your perception. It can never be wrong.
I agree. I think that for me too, Anyeli, like on the same note, when you think about like, well, this was my first time publishing, but my, I had written that poem, ya con, like, or not poem, but it was started off as a poem at first. It was like a story. I wanted to honor my dad. Iban a ser los 10 años. Y después when I saw that opportunity to publish, I was like, why not? You know, we be talking so much. Nosotros hablamos de tanta mierda en esta vida. Why not publish it and make it something beautiful where other people can relate to? And so for me, I definitely felt like it was uncomfortable at first. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Jamberly, like when you first did the edits, I was like, damn, this is different. Okay, is this still the story? Like, what else do I do? But afterwards, I was like, okay, this is a part of being a writer. It's not necessarily that she's taking away my experience or whatever. It's that she's an editor trying to show me that this is the techniques in the same way that a teacher would. But you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I learned in this submission. But I appreciated that, because you may not see that on the other end, how I'm feeling as the writer getting the edits back. They were nothing bad, but it was just seeing like, okay, wow. You can start off writing a story that you put all into, and it could be a little different, but does the essence still stay the same? And if you're going on draft 2, what more else do you need to add? For the record, I did not add anything else. I just let it be what it was. But I think what needed to be delivered had to be said. And, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to publish it, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Nairobi. And Anyeli.
Jump in
Do
on
you
that.
have any questions?
Yeah, no, I wanted to jump in on that. I always, I I have been on the other side as a writer and felt like my entire piece was taken away. Like, I'm just like, so I always advocate when I work with anybody, like, to speak up and advocate for your work. If there's like anything like suggestions, you'd be like, no, I'm not comfortable with this, or I'm not comfortable with this. So always, whether it's with me or anybody else that you work with, make sure that you keep your voice. I was just talking to Luz about this last night, right? Like, don't let anyone change your voice. I mean, edits are fine, but you also have to have boundaries. And I encourage everybody to speak up on where your boundaries lie, whether you're comfortable with something going along, or like when you like, okay, let me just step back. And I've had some of the Cuenticos writers be like, I'm not comfortable with that. This is not okay. Or this, okay, so let's work around it. Let's do something that works for both of us. So I hope that you don't feel like your piece changed too much. And a lot of the people that do come and they like, I think anybody that's a writer should also be prepared for edits. You should at least, and I hope there are people that are watching this live that will know for, next time they submit, edit at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 times before submitting it. Only, so we don't not waste time, but like, so we can get it together, like at least the grammar checks. That would be super helpful. But other than that, we can work with other like developmental edits or paragraph, arrangements. That's doable. So
I think the fact knowing that you're on the other side editing it makes me feel so much better when I submit, because then I'm like, oh, Yamberly's gonna find the diamond in this pile of trash that I submit, or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that a lot of times we get in our heads about like, oh, the piece that I'm submitting has to be perfect, and this is exactly what's gonna be printed. And it's like, no, that's not the case. It has to still be edited.
Right. Like even me, I stuck my essay in there, but I was like, I rewrote it like 20 times, but I wish I had someone else to tell me like, hey, maybe this should go here. Like even I need an editor. Even I need to work on my own things. So, but yeah. And by the way, everything you send in is just like amazing, by the way. You have such strong lines in there. So I don't, when people start telling me like, I don't know, no, like I be reading these things. I'm like, holy shit, like, yes. I don't know how people hesitate. Oh, I hesitate for my own stuff, but like when I read your work, I'm like, yes, send me more.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even with the edits, like I can still see people's personalities. Like I can tell, even through reading it, I can see Abril's personality. I saw it right from the book. It was cool.
It's funny because I feel like once you're in, I call it DWA club. This is our little club here. But like once you start reading people's works, you know who it is. Like I could identify Henry's work. I feel like I could identify certain people's work. But no, that that's good to have your own, voice. And I want
to say, I'm not the only one. Like even when you submit in other places, you have to remember they're just people. Like editors or publishers or whoever's in the other side of an email, whoever's on the other side of wherever you're sending it to, it's a person with a title with a, I can say I'm comfortable with the title writer. You want to throw me editor, you want to throw me writing consultant, I'm gonna take it. Okay, whatever you want to call me, fine. But don't be intimidated to send your work to different places because they're people and this is your work and you should be proud of it and you should share it. We need Dominican voices out there.
I think having, like was mentioned before, like having someone on the other end that understands you and like you feel comfortable with helps a lot, right? So like prior to finding Dominican writers, I would write pieces and try to get feedback on it, and it just never felt right. So like I could write something completely in English and it's whatever, but like if you want to write about your family, you have to have the Spanglish, or at least there's like, we have to throw some Dominican idioms in there. And then like, I would send that, like I took this workshop and I sent it to the teacher and she's like, oh, this is really good, but I don't understand this part. Like, why is your father upset here or your mother upset here? Or like, why is there so much emotion? Because we're emotional people. Like this just how it comes out. But like, then I'll send that to Yamberly and she's like, oh my God, I love this part. Or like in the comments, like, yes, expand on this dialogue. Meanwhile, the other people are like, maybe we should remove this. So it absolutely helps. And it's it makes for a better story to have someone who understands it and can give you like the proper feedback. So it's an invaluable asset.
There's a word for that when I was in school. It's cultural. I don't think it's cultural relevance, but I forget. I went to school for mental health. My master's is in mental health counseling. And we were having these conversations about how yes, cultural competence. Thank you, Abril. How therapists need to be aware of people's cultural backgrounds, because if they don't, they tend to misdiagnose you. For example, we have a lot of traditions with Los Santos. Nosotros le prendemos vela a Los Santos. We talk to our dead people, right? We and that's a tradition that is not only ours, it's also Asian, it's also Hindu. But you go to, let's say a white therapist, and they might say, oh, tú estás hablando sola. You hearing voices? Schizophrenia, check, and they put you on medication when it has nothing to do with that. This is just our people. This is just how we get through our day, and how we revere our dead,
Our ancestors.
our ancestors. So I lost my train of thought, but
I had a Dominican therapist, and we had a whole conversation one time about saying Cion Mami or Cion Papi or like Cion whatever, like, perfect for this conversation, but like how I was complaining that I didn't want to say good morning all the time, but like with parents, they'd be like, oh, bésame la mano, bésame la mano. I'm like, damn, I just woke up. Like, sheesh.
Tú dormiste conmigo fue.
Oh, you got that line too? You got that line too? Yo.
and we all traumatized here.
Everybody got that line. If you didn't sleep with me, bésame la mano.
Right.
Damn, that's wild. Well, if no one wants to interject, I want to say how I felt about family reading it. Because first of all, you guys almost got me in trouble because when my mom heard that this was going to get published, she was like, y el mío. Tú solamente
her story?
y el de la madre. Y porque, why didn't you, why? And I was like, hold on, excuse me, pause, wait a minute, before you get all,
Yeah,
you love your dad more than me?
You missed the deadline.
Yeah, I was like, look, I was like, it wasn't me. I just found out about Dominicans at right. It's not my fault, okay? Wait a minute now. I just figured this out, okay? Second of all, the deadline was like 2 weeks ago. It's like, no. You got to send them an email. You got to ask them, hey, are you guys... I was like, hold on now. Like, wait a minute. Like, anyway, so that was that. And then once I started gathering the material and I was interviewing my dad, and he was like, you really want to write about me? And he's like, I haven't even done that. Like, anything like cool, impressive, or anything bad. And I was like, yeah, you think, but all the stuff that you've been doing, I've been seeing it, and I've been thinking and analyzing. When I have my kids, do I want to be like that? Do I want to do that? Do I not want to do that? And then as I was researching, like, he would tell me how he became such an amazing father was because his dad was like the majority of your guys' dads, and he was such a bad grandfather / father. And he was like, my dad would leave me, and my dad was the oldest of 4, and the 3 his younger siblings eran todas mujeres. And so like very early on, my dad knew how to like deal with women, like very early on. And he would tell me like, you got to be this, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I'm like, how do you know so much about women? Like, tú eres mujeriego. He's like, no, it's like, I had 3 sisters. I was like, 3 sisters? I got 1 sister and I'm already tired of her. And he's like, yeah, I got 3. And all of them, I knew I had to know how to do their hair and how to, cook for them. And, I had to go out there and be like the cobbler, like somebody said, and I had to shoe shine to come back home. And the small money that I had to get food to provide for my sisters whenever my dad wouldn't come home, and he would just drink it away or stay doing whatever elsewhere. And I was like, damn, so like you grew up as like the dad of the house. He's like, yeah, I never really thought about that. I could have put that on there, but I didn't think that, I had enough room. Maybe next time, maybe para el próximo. But when I was thinking about like all the stuff that I could write about, I just thought like the best stuff was his example about like how to be the ideal father, was because he didn't have the ideal father. His dad was like el mujeriego que siempre estaba en la calle, would never spend money. Like somebody mentioned, like, you know, I thought being a dad, he thought that being a dad was just to send money. Like my dad's dad didn't even afford time, money, would maybe spend like once a week, maybe at the house.
Left to the women, and the father was disciplining and providing.
Yeah, so
You
he
know,
was
he
like
came
MIA.
home, y todo el mundo tenía que estar alineado, y la comida preparada, y la casa limpia, and then he got to watch his TV, listen to his radio, read his newspaper, and then do the same thing the next day.
Yeah, and then
That was
it threw it
our
even for more.
grandfather's generation.
It threw it even more for a loop, because then when my grandfather on my dad's side split up with my dad's mom, my dad's dad kept them, the kids, and my grandma left the house. So then it was just a whole bunch of kids just raising them. Yeah, it was just a whole bunch of kids raised. And then I was like, damn, so from such a young age, you were doing all that? And he's like, yeah. I was like, did you ever complain or anything? And he's like, who am I going to complain to? He's like, who's going to come and save me? He's like, my sisters didn't know any better. They just came into this world. So I had to step up and be the man that they didn't see. And that's why I'm always working, and that's why I'm never complaining. That's why I'm always trying to teach you guys morals and this. And my dad was silent. He never would complain. Like he would break a back, and he would, stub his toe, everything. And you wouldn't know that he was going through pain. Like he would be bleeding. And I was like, damn, why do you do all this? And he's like, because I just got so used to it, doing it for my sisters, that of course I'm going to do it for my kids that I love and I care, so much for. And I don't want you guys to see me being in a state of weakness and stuff like that. I was like, damn, Dad, I gotta hype you up when I write about this. And he's like, well, hold on now.
Held on to so much. And there's tons of stuff that they still won't reveal to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, Jamberly? Oh, Anyeli, I believe, was asking about the selection process. Was it Anyeli or Nairobi?
It was me. Yeah, it was me. Yo quería saber, like, how was it that, we got selected, and what were some of those things that you look for in writers? Because I think especially, as a first time, person getting published for the first time, I was like, I was ecstatic. I was like, pero ven acá, estamos serios ya, you know what I'm saying? But for someone who...
First of all, you need to be mad Dominican.
Yeah.
That's a prerequisite.
Actually,
Because, mad people try to get published by us, and I gotta be like, you're not Dominican, sorry.
Ooh. What's the Dominican test?
What's
the Dominican test?
Bad, but the platform was created very intentionally, and it was to get as many of us published this year. I think Jamberly can confirm that we have published, just with Cuenticos, we have published about 60 writers this year.
Yeah, close to 60. I think we're up to 57, I believe.
Right. So what that does is that for many of you, it lights the fire under your ass, and it gives you that self-confidence that you were looking for to call yourself a writer and to try to submit your work to other spaces, right? And even at some point, maybe you even go as far as dreaming of publishing a book, of, getting a literary agent or going the self-publishing route. But, it leaves something with you when you're writing with us. And also, we're like family. We don't run our nonprofit like the majority of literary nonprofits that be like, oh, they're like, ¿cómo te digo? They're very, bueno, a lot of nonprofits, you don't know who's behind them, but you're always going to see my face. Because I like to connect with our audience. I like to see what our writers need. I like to, I like to put our stories out there. I think our stories are very relatable. I think they matter. Even for those of you who don't share the same experience with your fathers, you're still like, yes, I get that. I understand that. And that's what the majority of us need as writers, because often we find ourselves in these white spaces where, like Henry said, they don't understand where we're coming from, and they're trying to have us omit things and edit things out and remove things just because that white reader doesn't get it. But guess what? We don't publish for white readers. I could care less if a white person is reading our stories. Because our stories are for our people, for the next generations, they're for you, so that everyone could see that, one, we're not only, you know, jodedores, chapeadores, peluquero, bodeguero. You know, we're also academics, right? And for many years, Dominicans were not associated with academia, with writing, even though we have such a huge amount of writers, even going back to the island with Salome Oreña, with Juan Bosch. Like, if you look up the history of Dominican writers in DR, like the first school was in the DR, like, you know, so we have, many of us are academics, many of us are out there getting our education as well, and we're writing. And, you know, my job is to make sure that everybody knows your story and that it reaches as many hands as possible. So, you know, that's how I run the platform, por lo menos. I only work for Dominicans and by Dominicans. Everyone on my staff is Dominican. Everyone I hire is Dominican. But Jamberly here has a very specific, bueno, Jamberly a todo el mundo le quiere dar chance. Sometimes I'm like, Jamberly, how many people submitted? How many do you reject? And she was like, oh, hay una muchacha, she needs a lot of help, but I think I'm gonna email her and I'm gonna walk her through it. And I'm like, we don't got time for that, Jamberly. Because sometimes I'm like on a deadline, and I'm like, Jamberly, we don't have time to hold people's hands. If they didn't follow instructions, let them be. Because there are some people who don't follow instructions. And then I'm a stickler for instructions and following guidelines, but there's people that for some reason they don't read through it. And I'm just like, you know what? You should reject them and tell them they got rejected for not reading. How are you a writer and you're not reading?
Yeah, I love how every time you post.
Sorry, Henry, go.
No, I was gonna say that anytime that you guys post like the call for submission, there's always someone in the comments asking like, when's the deadline? Or, you know, what's the topic? And then you just see Angie respond like, lee lo que está arriba, read the post. It's like,
Angie's straightforward. And we're
obvious.
like,
Yeah,
wow.
You can tell you a Dominican mom, girl. You can tell.
I put it on the flyer and I put it in the caption. So how are you missing this? I had somebody else the other day, Dike, oh, where can I get tickets for your event in January? And I'm like, it's on the flyer. And she's like, oh, I'm just being lazy. Oh my gosh, she said that to me. And I was just like, oh, just click on the link in bio. And then it was someone that I work with. And I was like, really? You hitting me up like that? Because, oh, agárrame 3 tickets. And I'm like, no, because if you missed it and you didn't buy the tickets, that's on you. I'm not holding tickets for nobody. It's first come, first serve.
I never ask Angie questions unless I've checked the Instagram, the website, the YouTube channel, the everything. I check all my sources first before I ask a question. I'm not gonna play no games.
She did not play. I was like, I won't be in DR. She's like, so?
I'm like,
another girl was in DR. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna make it.
No, Elizabeth, but when
I'm in my mother's bedroom because
told me, I was like, maybe you could send us a video. Because I do, si tú estás un campo,
I know, but I'm like, a video? I feel like that's not personal, you know?
Yeah, if you're in un campo, in the boondocks, I get it, you don't have Wi-Fi. Pero si tú estás en Santiago, en Santo Domingo.
I'm not, I'm in the campo, yo. I'm legit campo.
I would have been like.
But my Wi-Fi is working today. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, I would have been like, go rent an Airbnb and do the live. No, I wasn't going to say that. No, yeah, I did think about it.
No, but I was in Airbnb last week. That's why I didn't. Remember, I got COVID, so I had to extend my trip, and it threw off my whole flow. But it's all good.
So Jamberly, you be the nice one now and explain what your selection process is.
Okay, I started, I was gonna be really, really like firm, and I was like reading, and honestly, I'm easy because like it takes one line to make a story, like pop. Like that, the one line that if I, like for example, with books, if I'm reading, if I can't get past the first or second page, I'm not reading the book. So I do the same thing with essays. It just has to grab me from the beginning, or I have to find this line that just sticks out, that's gonna be memorable. Nobody wants to read a story that you just cannot, connect with. So that's kind of me. I just go by my feelings. But that was I started La Doña like that, but now I am up to De Eso No Se Habla, and even if the stories aren't written perfectly, the purpose of it is that important, whether it's on mental health or homophobia or anything, like it just needs to be spoken on. So for De Eso No Se Habla, that's why we now have 30 pieces, because most of them that were submitted did get accepted, except the ones that did not follow the guidelines. So if you didn't follow the guidelines, then you were automatically not gonna get the acceptance letter. But yeah, so it's just growing, because I just feel like the conversation is more important than the actual, grammar. Like we can fix that. We can work on the story. The important thing is what we're trying to get out of it as a community. So does that answer it? I don't know. But yeah, I'm telling you, just read the line, like that just sticks with you. That really helps. Like
Nairobi wants to see if she should continue submitting.
yes.
Yeah. I was like, do we have room for one more?
Yeah. Keep writing. Like I'm never gonna tell anyone like, no, don't do that. Keep writing. What in the world?
Yeah, just had one of my Dominican friends ask like what Dominicans are writing? And it's like, wait, yeah, I told you about it. It's like, what? Like, I definitely want to do it. I want to do it. How do I submit? What do I do? What do I do? Like, what's the criteria? What's the selection? I'm like,
so that means that your friend has never read a Dominican book.
Bueno.
I'm not gonna lie, my sisters too. Like I have a sister from my dad's side, she's like, Dominicans, right? Like, yeah.
If he's read a Dominican book, he would have been like, oh yeah, there are Dominicans who write. But apparently you need to gift them their first Dominican book.
But that's the thing, a lot of people, even in our community, they think that we're just like,
well, what are your recommendations, guys, on Dominican books? What should Rafael's friends start with?
I mean, I think you got to go with Julia Alvarez to start them off. The first book from her I ever read was How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and what was crazy is that, as old as I am, back in the day, they were giving that out in my high school. So, like, to have that and to see the name, because I remember my dad had In the Time of the Butterflies in the house, and then I saw the name, oh, Julia Alvarez. And then when I saw that in school, I was like, I'm going to read this. And then when you read the story and how it relates, even though it's like a different era, but like you connect with this. So I'd say, yeah, your friend definitely needs to, I mean, we've been out here for like 40 plus years publishing books from Dominican. So he got some catching up to do, but I think that's a good one to start with.
Exactly. Everyone said Juno, of course, Oscar Wilde.
So Julia Alvarez put out a book. I think it was like the one, I can't remember the name of it, but I can see the cover. It was about like her in a relationship, if somebody knows it, with un haitiano que se llamaba Piti. And like, it, for some reason, listen, when I read that book, I was like, yo, we need to be talking more about this. Like, we need to be talking more about these stories and our, like, how Dominicans interface with Haitians and like what that means, right? Like, and the stereotypes of like lo haitiano. But when I read that, I felt so seen, because la primera vez que yo fui para Santo Domingo, a mí me habían dicho cosas que no eran verdad de lo haitiano. And I had to like break out of that, that stereotype to understand, like, bro, like our people are mad racist, like overtly, and hopefully that somebody talks about that in Eso No Se Habla, even though I know that's more of a mental health piece, but yeah, racism is a mental health issue. So by all means.
No, De Eso No Se Habla is not just mental health.
Oh, it's not.
It's on everything, but I don't think we have one on racism.
What?
I-
Dominicans? Not talking about race?
Wait, I'm gonna go back and check.
Oh, no, we haven't included a call for submission on that topic. But yeah, de eso no se habla was including sexuality, mental health. What else, Jamberly?
My mind blanked right now, but
It
everything.
was like about sex, homophobia, mental health,
Sexual education.
yeah.
So
All
just
the
general
taboo
taboos.
topics
Taboos.
that are in our
Everything that
home.
you're told not to talk about it. That is the theme. There was no specific, like, just talk about whatever you're not supposed to, basically.
Right.
Not
And
gonna
I
cover
think
anything.
that book is called Wedding in Haiti. A Wedding in Haiti, I think it's called.
Yes, that's what it was.
We should probably put a trigger warning on that book because a lot of the topics are hard. It was hard to write. I remember the workshop, like it was a hard process to talk about the traumas and things that, you know, where everyone's still processing. So that life is gonna be hard.
Bueno, señores, it is 9:13. I want to say thank you to everyone who has tuned in. We had about 30-something people tune into the YouTube live. If you look at the chat, which will still remain on the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see everyone's comments. People are laughing, relating, you know, applauding all of you, congratulating all of you for submitting to this. Some people went ahead to the website and made their orders. I just want to say that we ran out of copies. I'm on the third print run of Cion Papi. It has been the best-selling Cuenticos book that we've had so far. I didn't order La Doña or Dominican Moms Be Like as much as I have had to order Cion Papi. Every time I think, oh, okay, I don't need more. I need to order another load. Like I was sitting here and I ordered another bunch of copies because people are ordering it. So yeah, continue sharing the book, continue sharing it with your family and friends. Definitely tell people that Dominican writers exist and that you are one of them. Okay? Que dejen de estar pasando vergüenza. We have a website, we have social media, we sell awesome merch, we have beautiful bookmarks, we have books, we have everything to make you feel proud of being a Dominican writer. Okay, I put a lot of effort, my staff and I put a lot of work into this organization, and it was created for you so that, you know, people could get to know your work. So I am proud of every single one of you that has submitted to this call for submission. I hope to see your faces often. I hope that you continue engaging with the platform. And that we see you, you know, every time you post something, you're writing or whatever, even if it's not through us, that you tag us on it, you let us know, hey, I published this, you know, and Dominican writers will be sure to repost. So thank you all for being here tonight and for showing your beautiful faces. Jamberly, don't cry, Jamberly.
I'm just so happy. I'm so proud of it. No, thank you. Thank you for joining us for the essays and Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas.
Hasta el
Feliz Navidad.
Bye.
Feliz Navidad.